questions, please feel free to remain until we kind of networking until our kind of virtual doors close around 7 p.m. And in terms of the networking session or the kind of discussion session, let's not forget the elephant in the room here. So as kind of everyone knows, Atlassian made the announcement last week about the end of server coming soon. And so I know we'll have a lot of points for discussions. And so please feel free to stay to either discuss or vent, I should say, about this announcement and how it's going to affect you. We definitely want to hear some thoughts from you folks as well if you are on server. All right. And so let me just kind of run through here quickly the kind of some other notes here. So announcements here before we get started here. Code of conduct, just as you saw, folks, everyone can share the screens and also be able to speak. So do appreciate if you can just keep thinking on keep it on mute in the background there. And then when we do have questions, either feel free to use the chat window to announce the question, or just go ahead and excuse me, just unmute yourself and ask the question directly there. Okay. And again, we have some raffles here. Obviously, we don't have the food and the drinks that we used to have for our regular events, but we do have some great sponsors here giving gift cards here to incentivize us to come here. So I want to thank our sponsors, obviously Atlassian, for hosting the event and everything around it. And then ALM Works, $25 gift cards. We have eCore here giving gift cards as well, and then kind of our grand prize is a nice bottle of bourbon from C Prime. So again, thanks to our sponsors here. And just some other quick announcements here, and I'll go into detail at the end here after our presentations. We have kind of the online community group, so think of this as kind of Stack Overflow for all things Atlassian. And as you know, please, we have Atlassians as well, from what I understand, who also answer some of the questions. If you're into issues, you can always go on this Atlassian community group. We do have a New York City community group as well, kind of a way to network there as well. All right. And just some quick announcements here. Again, I'll go into detail. So most of you folks know about the Atlassian Team Tour that's happening on the 9th, and then there's Developer Day. And we'll talk about the Atlassian, our next user group meeting, which is on November 19th, which is a Jira Roundtable. And then also, as you folks saw during the looping section of the event tonight, we do have a couple of different webinars coming through. So please go check this out as well if you're interested in any of these topics. And I'll go into detail later tonight. Okay, so that's really it for the quick announcements. I don't want to take up some time, any more time, so I want to hand it off to our first speaker for tonight for the presentation. So it's Phil Hitchcock, who is a lead solutions engineer from ALM Works, and he's going to talk about all things about dashboards. So Phil, off to you.
Awesome, thank you. Let me gratuitously copy-paste my LinkedIn into the chat window, just so if anybody wants to reach out afterwards, they're free to do so. Now the hard part, sharing the screens. So hopefully everybody can see my presentation. So I'm going to quickly talk about some dashboards in Jira, and hopefully give you a little bit of insight on how you can best build them and what are the ways that you can get the most out of the dashboards themselves. Very briefly about me, as Luke already said, my name's Phil. I work for ALM Works. The nature of my job means I see a lot of different Jira instances, and this is a great thing for you guys because it means I can kind of take all the interesting solutions that I see all of our customers come up with and present them to you guys as if I came up with these things on my own. The last bullet that looks a little dubious right here, one of the things I really enjoy doing is helping people wrestle with the tool less. So what that means is spend less time getting Jira to do something and more time getting what you want out of it, and then therefore go on to do with the thing that you really need to do, whether that's writing code or finding someone to talk to about certain issues or whatnot. So it's kind of I worded it poorly here, but I hope you guys know what I mean. So in terms of the dashboards, I kind of categorize them in 3 different groups, and I'll kind of cover all 3 of them briefly here, show you some good, bad, and the ugly, and hopefully kind of share some useful information for you guys. So I generally see them as immediate action required, which is stuff that is drop what you're doing and help There's the regular check-in stuff, which is basically like, all right, what do I need to work on today? Some people use Jira boards for this. Some people look at elsewhere. And then the last category is the kind of status reports. And these are the canonical kind of command center type things where all of a sudden your Jira looks like it belongs in the space shuttle cockpit where you've got 800 different pie charts and stuff like that up there. And so these are the different types. And I want to help you guys build the right one the right way so that everybody kind of gets the most out of it. So a few things to consider to keep in the back of your mind. Keep in mind who this is for. If you're building it for you, you don't have to think too much about how people could interpret something. But if you're building this as a reporting tool, it helps to keep in mind, how they're going to see it. They're going to see everything the first time, and therefore, what's going to draw their eye, or do they need extra context for certain things? Maybe add some titles and labels, stuff like that. A lot of this is just general basic principles of displaying information, UI, UX kind of stuff. The other thing is, should it be actionable? This is actually one of the things that is conceptually really easy to think of, but not always the easiest answer. Basically, do you want people to be able to click on something and then go to the issue page, go to the boards, what have you? Or if it's a reporting tool and you have a pointy-haired boss, so to speak, you don't want them clicking on things and potentially dragging and dropping items and changing the rank of issues and stuff like that. So making something read-only might be a good idea sometimes. And then very related to that, you want to think about the next steps. You're going to present information to them. The information can usually go one of a couple of ways, and they're going to have a follow-up action that they want to do. They want to go to the issue page, they want to go to the Scrum board, they want to go and figure out who to talk to. And so those things you may also want to keep in mind and make easy. So if they want to go to the Scrum board, for example, make sure there's a link that they can quickly get there. Stuff like that. What we really don't want is something like this, where there's a lot of colors and they jumble up, and your eye is drawn to a lot of different things, but there's no clear hierarchy of information and no clear presentation of what it is we're talking about. And so what this leads to, and I love using this little picture any chance I get, is you're not sure what's going on, and you have to really figure out and focus on deciphering the presentation before you even get to the information that's presented there. And so this is what we don't want. We want everything to be immediately apparent where they're getting it, and then they can zoom their attention on the relevant parts as they get there. So let's go over the 3 different types of dashboards and some kind of thoughts behind it. The first one is the immediate action one. We won't spend too much time here. Generally speaking, there'll only be 1 or 2 gadgets here. I really like using JQL functions here. So if you have Script Runner, for example, you can create some really powerful queries, and you just show the result of the query. And I really subscribe to the kind of the Eisenhower matrix in terms of this needs to be things that are both urgent and important. So there's a time crunch element to it. So let me show you what mine looks like. This is what mine looks like. And I'm not trying to be coy here, but this is literally how I like it. Because if anything shows up here, it means I have to drop whatever I'm doing and take care of it. So, I generally track some support tickets, threatening SLA breaches, things that my team are working on. And when they meet a certain criteria, it shows up here. And generally speaking, this is kind of the last line of defense, but you might have been working on something, you might have been on a call, you might have been away for a week, and you want to know if there's something urgent that requires your attention right away. So I check in here regularly. And we built these things for customers too. So for example, the customer let me rebuild theirs, and this is what it looks like. He's the head of development. He cares very much about what's currently in production and what his team is currently working on. And he doesn't really care about the details. He just wants to make sure that there's nothing critical going on in production. And he doesn't want to make sure, or he wants to make sure that his team isn't blocked. That's it. That's all he cares about. So as long as those are zeros, we're good. We can move along. We can go check our email, go to our meeting, what have you. For the regular check-in, we're going to add a little bit more information. So this is mine, or one of mine. I work in 3 different Jira instances, so it's a little trickier to have a single one. But this is what it looks like. I track service desk here. I can see all the tickets that have been replied to. This is stuff that's important to me. And I can track the rate at which tickets are coming in. So I can see when the support team is swamped and lend a hand if they need it. That's generally kind of the red line there. So if red peaks well above the green line, I know support's getting slammed and I should probably go help them. Another example of that regular check-in is this one. I can check in our development instance, what's currently being worked on, what the status is of multiple products, things like that. I don't check this every hour, every minute like I would the other one. This is something I check maybe a couple times a week, just to see the general trend that things are going at. And remember, creating a new dashboard is really cheap in Jira. You can just create a bunch of them and reference them. So when I go to a dashboard, at a glance, I can really see like, all right, cool, there's 2 new things being worked on for, or 1 thing currently being worked on for deliver, 52 items in structure. I've got 2 tasks as part of the marketing project, things like that. And if those are roughly where I expect them to be, I can either go in and expand them out, or I can just ignore them and again, move on with my day. I have yet another project. This one's on cloud, same principle. I just have a flat list of things that I'm really interested in. And in this case, what I'm really looking for is stuff that's blocked. So things that are in review, ready for me to look at. If there's nothing there, and again, these are sorted by rank, we're all good. And so I can see the activity stream, so I can see what people are working on. I filter this out so you don't see all the stuff my team is doing right now, but effectively, these are articles we're writing and knowledge-based things. It's very simple, and it's you know, again, I want to be able to at a glance see if there's something that needs my attention or not, because generally speaking, this will kind of make me rework my schedule, but it won't necessarily be drop whatever you're doing right now, just like with the immediate action type of dashboards. Finally, we come to the status reports. This is where I'm going to share some good, bad, and the ugly. For the obvious reasons, I don't have any examples from customers because it's a really hard thing to say, like, hey, can I get a screenshot of that? Because I want to show this to people on what not to do. But generally speaking, this is where you're really going to focus on tailoring this to not just the status you want to show, but also who you're showing this to. And so remove anything that's not relevant. If you're trying to show, for example, what your team is currently working on, don't add cycle time, velocity, the amount of bugs they've submitted, all that stuff. Focus on one single glance, make it green if it's good, red if it's bad, and orange if it's kind of at risk, for example. Make it one glance piece of information. The other type of status reports that are worth considering here are the reference status reports, I guess, so to speak. It's the kind of stuff that you have open on the corner of a desk, you know, back in the old days when we used to have meetings in person. So you'd be having a conversation with someone and they become a reference that you check every now and then. And again, graphs here are your friend. I say that with the caveat of too many graphs are no longer your friend. You know, 1 or 2, maybe 3, if they're all different and easily identifiable, are great. When you put just nothing but graphs on a page, then we lose that ability to quickly glance and see information. So that's kind of the thing to keep in mind. So let me show you some good and some not so good. This one I think is a really good one. There's a couple of graphs, but they're clearly different. They all have labels and they have headings. And that tells you at a glance, all right, this is a trend that I want to see right here in the middle. I can see in the pie chart the distribution of different ticket types. And I can drill down if I want to below it in terms of seeing more. I've got an actionable option in terms of searching in the top left. And you know, this is information that very quickly I can see, all right, this is the trend. If that's something that's important to me, I can zoom in on. This one is a distribution. And then again, if these are within the realm of expectation or something I want to use, I can start referencing the numbers by looking really deeply at it. Another good example would be something like this. Adding a calendar is really useful because it's very recognizable. At a glance, I can see, all right, cool. Weekends on each edge. I can see where the issues have been placed, when the releases are. I've got a list here of different people and what they're working on. And then a distribution by topic. It's very easy. It's a good way to get things, again, at a glance, because you don't want things to get too cluttered. An example of what a cluttered dashboard starts to look like is this. It's not bad yet, but it's starting to get too much, right? You can see that there's, that bar chart is okay, but you can start seeing that the list below it, there's too much information. You really have to kind of do that Mr. Chang thing from community and really dive in and dig in and be like, all right, one has a firm commitment, that's commitment. The other one's status. All right, we've got multiple issue types going on here. And then you got to look at the other ones, and it becomes it becomes something that you have to really focus on, maybe get a cup of coffee before you can decipher this. And when that becomes the case, the dashboard is no longer the optimal medium for this. You may want to add this to a Confluence page, add some pieces of text to break this up a little bit, use white space to your advantage, use the text for creating context. It becomes easier to digest as a consumer. Some bad. This one I thought was kind of bad. I've seen some things that are much, much worse. There's a token ugly slide at the end of this, for those of you that like Western references. But again, we're lacking titles. We've got multiple duplicates. You can see the middle row, it's all USA. I don't know what the difference is between the first USA and the second one and the third. Maybe it's by time, maybe it's by team. There's clearly one Germany one that's gone all colorful, but there's not, you can't decipher anything going on here. So this is an indication, all right, there's too much information, and at the same time, for each individual block, there's not enough. I can't really get anything out of this. And then the ugly, this thing, this is not the actual thing. The one I saw was much, much worse. But you can see what I mean. Someone attempted to add red and green as a sign of things are okay or things are at risk or something bad is happening here. And they've added some sort of color coding and letter coding and too much of this. And I don't know what's going on here. It is ugly in the extreme, but it also doesn't really tell me much. I've got a 55 and 53% in the middle there. There's a graph that really doesn't tell me much either. So this is definitely something that you want to avoid. And these are examples I'm hopefully showing you that if you think about how your graph is going to be consumed or how your dashboard is going to be consumed, you can avoid it, keep it simple, break things up into multiple different dashboards when you can. And when you feel like the information is getting too dense and you can't keep it in one, but you need to keep the information together, Confluence is your friend. Then put things there. Almost all the gadgets that I know of that live on a Jira dashboard can be put inside Confluence as well. So as long as your Confluence is linked to Jira, that's definitely the way to go from a reporting angle, from a really more complicated status update. That having been said, I think I'm at the end of time. So thank you. Anybody has any Q&A questions, they can ask them now. I'll stick around to the end, to the networking session. I don't think I'm allowed to win the bourbon bottle, but I wouldn't mind. And otherwise, I'm happy to field any questions you guys can ping my way through chat or through LinkedIn.
Great. Thank you, Phil. We do have our first question from Terry. She's asked on the Zoom side. I'll just read it out loud here. She goes, I've never created a dashboard before. What resources are available to create similar ones to what Phil showed? So maybe, I don't know, Phil, if you got any tips or places that you've looked at when you've, I'm sure, created either for yourself and your team or for your clients.
Yeah, so there's two really good ones, and there's one that I would avoid. And it's ironic because the one that I suggest to avoid is going to be the #1 search result if you Google this. Atlassian has a pretty decent one conceptually, except the top search result is from 2012, and I think it's Jira version 4 or something like that, so don't go there. But the ones under that, when you search for Jira dashboard help, Atlassian has a really, really good tool in terms of like a walkthrough and a guide. There's also a course that I haven't taken, but Atlassians are pretty good. And then almost every partner that I know of, the large ones, so the Cprime, Adalco, Adaptivist, they have a blog post showing you their gadget options. So what I would suggest from that perspective is if you go to the dashboard and you click create or add a widget, you can see the list of the ones that are there. And there's a description that tells you what each one does. And there's a bunch of them that come with Atlassian's Jira out of the box, and there's a bunch of them that come with the plugins that you have. And so you can kind of experiment a little bit, but almost always a quick Google search, Jira dashboard, and then whatever the plugin is that you want to use will give you a good example of how to use it and some help. And otherwise, you can always, ping me or someone else to point you in the right direction. So there's resources out there. They're generally easy to find, but most of it will be you're going to tailor it to your exact use case. So it's probably best to play around with it a little bit. They're not super tricky to put together. But if you have questions, you can always reach out. I'd be happy to help.
Great, thank you. Folks have any more questions here? Again, just unmute your mic or just put it on the chat window there. Right. So just one question here, Phil, that I want to ask you. When you give your status reports to your managers, just any tips on that? Do you just have it live, or how do you do that?
So I generally don't use the dashboard itself to do the status report if I have the opportunity to talk face-to-face. The dashboard's great for asynchronous communication because anybody can check it whenever they have time. So those are the two differences, I guess. Asynchronous, I'd use the dashboard, I'd make sure it's available, and as long as Jira's up to date, that's great. For one-to-one or one to a few kind of conversations, you can check the dashboard for any recent changes and any numbers you want to reference, but I generally try and keep them out of view because I think that one-to-one right now, especially with the new world we seem to be living in, it makes sense to focus on the interaction that you can get, the questions you want to answer, and so it's best not to have too much extra information there. That's just personal preference, really.
Okay, oh, great. That does make sense then. All right, great. Thank you, Phil. All right, let's move on to our next speaker, Nelly Samak from Elements, a support engineer. She's going to talk about, I guess, one of the other questions I'm sure always comes up in dashboards about how to integrate data from other sources into Jira. So Nelly, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Do you see it?
Perfect, we can see it.
Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Nelly Samak and I'm really glad I'm participating with this ACE event with you. This is my first ACE participation, so I'm excited and kind of nervous at the same time. So I'm part of the support team at Elements, and if you don't know Elements, we are an Atlassian Platinum Marketplace partner, and we are part of the Valiantis Group, which is a top Atlassian Platinum solution partner. Currently, we have 3 Jira apps and 1 Confluence app on the Atlassian Marketplace. All of our apps are available now on server, data center, and cloud as well. So today I'll be showing you 3 examples about how you can leverage your external data inside Jira with our app Elements Connect. The idea is to give you an overview of what you can do with our app, and hopefully you can get some ideas to take back to your office. So if you are here, it's because you are using Jira in your business, but this is definitely not the only tool you are using. So your company might have a CRM like Salesforce, an LDAP with employees' details, a Confluence, or any other identity and access management system, as well as to some internally developed tools and data sources. But if the tools can't talk to each other, you will end up blocked like this Salesforce data that is blocked and can't access Jira. And you will end up wasting lots of time looking up for the information you need, manually copying, and maybe ending up inserting mistakes into Jira. But now, if you imagine that Jira can be the hub in your information system, with all the data from your different tools, there's where our app, Elements Connect, will comes in. So Elements Connects allow you to bring external data inside Jira issues. Your data could be from a CSV file, REST API, or even from Jira itself. For example, I recently helped a client who contacted Elements support, and they needed to connect their SQL data source to Jira. Elements is available on server and data center, and the cloud version is now available on the Atlassian Marketplace. Today, I'm going to show you, as I said, 3 examples how you can leverage external data inside Jira using the server or data center version of our apps. So the first use case, we will look at how you can get information about your employees from an LDAP. Then, in the second use case, we will see how you can connect Jira to a product catalog such as Best Buy using the REST API and display details from the catalog into Jira issues. And finally, we will also see how you can connect Jira to Salesforce and get details about your deals, accounts, or even contacts. So let's get started. Today's examples, as I said, will be using the server or data center version of our app. The first example I want to share with you is how you can get employee details from an LDAP into Jira issues. In this example, we will display employee extra information in a Jira issue. For this demo, I will be using our Elements Connect demo portal, and this portal is set up with a simplified view of Jira Service Desk, and we have only Elements Connect field set up on this portal. So we actually have two Elements Connect field. The first one is the user, and the second one is details. The first one is a drop-down list that will allow us to select an employee. Then in the second one, we will display the details about that employee selected in the first field. So if I click on the first field, which has live data, and start at selecting an employee, Hubert, for example, in the second field, we will display details from the LDAP, such as the employee position, phone number, email, or any other information that are available on the LDAP. One thing I want to throw your attention to is that the data that is displayed here could be customized by using HTML. So if you want to see quickly how this is done, here's a view of Elements Connect field configuration. So currently we are in the display view of our field, and this is the template where you can see the HTML that we have set up for this field. And here on the right side, you can see the field configuration tester, where we can test the queries and see how it will appear on Jira issues in the preview tab. So how this could be useful for you? It might be useful to display some information about the reporter of an issue, so you can really give more context to your Jira agents, or you can use it to manage access requests depending on the stored data in the LDAP for that employee, for example, like, his office, location, or department, or you can use it to set the user's manager as the approver of the ticket. Let's now move to our second use case. We are going to look at product details. And for this example, we are going to use Elements Connect to fetch data from the Best Buy product catalog using the Best Buy REST API. So here again, our simplified Jira Service Desk, and we have here 3 Elements Connect custom fields that we set up. The first field is again a drop-down list to select a category of the product, and the second field is to select the product that will fetch the selected category, and the last one is the product details. This is a read-only field that will display the details about the selected product. Since there are a lot of categories, I'm going now to start typing in the field, and the autocomplete will fetch the options that match what I've typed. So if I select computers and tablets, in the second field, only the products that match that category will be available, and the user can select one of them. And then in the last field, the product details, we will see different details about the selected product, including the photo, price, or description. So again, the same question, how could this be useful for you? It might be useful to place orders to a supplier with live updates about the price and availability of your products. On the supplier side, you can also give access to your own catalog via Jira, and you can go even a step further and by creating a code generator connected to the catalog and adding several products. So now let's move to our next use case. Our next use case will be based to fetch data from a CRM like Salesforce and display customer data inside Jira issues. We will be using Salesforce REST API to fetch the data from the Salesforce. So now, in the previous 2 examples, we have used a Jira Service Desk for Server, but since our app Elements Connects work just the same with Jira Core and Jira Software, we will be using Jira Software for this example. So here we imagine we are in a sales project and we are in the middle of creating a pre-sales request. We have 3 Elements Connect field that we have set up. The first one is the Salesforce account, then the Salesforce contacts for this particular account, and then the Salesforce opportunities that are related to the selected account. So I start typing the name of the Salesforce account I'm looking for in the first field. And then the relevant account contacts and opportunities will be displayed in the 2 other fields. And the user would be able to select. In the issue view, we can see that the data fetched are displayed in 2 tabs. The first one is about the contact and the other about the sales opportunities. And you can even see here some additional information like the amount and the stage that we didn't fill in at issue creations. Those data are set up in the field configuration and will be retrieved dynamically. So maybe if you are wondering how we defined the 2 tabs on the issue view, this is actually a combination of native Jira functionality and Elements Connect custom field. And if I go to the configuration screen, here you can see that in the view issue screen of the project, we have 3 different tabs. So the first one is the field tab where I have all the system field. The other tab is for the sales contact where I have 3 Elements Connect field. And the last one is for the opportunities where we have our last Elements Connect field. So again, how could be this useful for you? Like in the example we just saw, you can close the information gap between your sales and project teams when they manage pre-sales requests in Jira. Another common use case is to enhance your customer support by fetching details about the clients and their company when they reach out to your support portal and raise requests. So your agent in that case will have more context, such as the number of users, the purchase history, language, or anything else from the CRM that can help agents to resolve the issues. Elements has helped one time a client who they connected Microsoft Dynamics CRM to Jira Service Desk, and they explained that they found it really useful to be able to display just key information from the CRM for the agents instead of having agents search for everything in the CRM. So today, the 3 use cases I showed you are available on our Elements Connect server demo portal. This is free. You just need to create an account, and I recommend you to go and check it and try the configuration yourself. If there is a use case you would like to try on your own instance, we've tried to make it as easy as possible for you by providing the field configurations available for download on the Element Connect documentation site. So since we can meet in person and give you some of our Elements goodies, we have a different kind of gift for you. This is a code, so you can get 20% of the purchase price for a server or data center license. We would love to offer the same for the cloud, but Atlassian doesn't offer that. I'm sorry. That's all for me. I hope you've got some ideas for how you could bring your external data inside Jira. Thank you very much for listening today. And if you don't know our other app, as I said, we also make 2 other Jira apps, Elements Copy and Sync and Elements Checklist, and 1 Confluence app, Elements Spreadsheet, all of them available on cloud, server, and data center. Thank you again. Any questions?
Thank you, Nelly. Any questions from the audience here?
This is Samantha speaking. I have just a small question out of curiosity. I'm assuming this app is very useful for e-commerce like the Best Buy, right? And I understand that it gives the product information and things that are useful and you're able to create tickets. But I was wondering if it has capability to also do like inventory as well.
Like an inventory management system, you mean?
Yeah. Is it able to keep track of, the things that are, in the warehouse, for example, versus like the stores, you know, because it's e-commerce, it's an object.
I can't give you a precise answer for now because it depends on the whole use case, but the aim of Elements Connect is, as I said, to get data from outside Jira and display it in a fields into Jira issues. So I'm not
So
sure
Jira
what
to Jira.
it displayed, yeah, inside Jira only.
Right, inside of the Jira.
Yeah.
I'm asking if you're still able to collect information for inventory. If you don't know, that's fine. I'm just asking out of curiosity.
Yeah. Samantha, I think the issue here is I think it's the connection is with any other external source. I'm not familiar with the product. Yeah, but you can definitely take it offline. But I think you said you provide kind of SQL Connect. So I think it depends on what API or connection capabilities from that inventory system. I'm sure that the data can be pulled in and displayed in Jira. Is that correct, Nelly?
Yeah, sure. And if you have a full use case that you have in mind, you can contact us on the support, or maybe you can leave your email here and I will reach you out with more details.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nelly. So we do have one more question from you writer. Sorry, I don't know your first name here. The question is, how much API do we need to know to use your product? Does your product do all the API calls? I'm not sure if I understand the details of the API. I don't know if you want to maybe unmute yourself and be more give more information on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. Can you please repeat it?
Hi, my name is Elliot.
Hi, Elliot.
Hi, sorry about that. Yeah, I thought you showed a screen before showing the API, like the code behind the,
you
the
want
process.
Me to go back?
If you think it's necessary, yeah. Yeah, that's the one, yeah. Well, I see that's HTML.
Yeah.
Well, then let me rephrase it. How much HTML do we have to know to work well with the product?
So HTML, it's something optional. You use it to display the information, as I did here, in more beautiful way. But it's not necessary. You don't need to know HTML to use the app. It's just a way to represent that box, the logos here. That's it. But you don't need to know HTML to use the app.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I thought I was looking at the API when you code like Python code or things like that.
No, it's
All
HTML
right.
only.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
All right, great. Thank you, Nelly. I don't think we have any more questions, so let's move on to our next speaker. So next set of speakers here. So we have Ron Schauer from Accelerants and Stephen Cahill from eCore, who's going to talk, I guess, one of our favorite topics, which are, I guess, timesheets. Off to you, folks.
Let me unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Okay. I was just going to say hello.
And are you seeing my screen now?
No, we just see you right now.
Okay. Share my screen here. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thanks. And thank you for inviting us to present this evening. We appreciate New York-ACE having us. To get started, this is a pared down, this case study is a pared down version of a full webinar we gave that included Tempo a couple of weeks back. We'd be happy to share the recorded webinar and this deck with anybody who's interested after. We will move fairly quickly through this tonight because it is a lightning chat, but just know that we can provide you with more information if you like after. To get going, Ryan, if you could kindly introduce yourself and Accelerants. I'm Steve Cahill from eCore, and we'll move forward and talk a little bit about the challenges that we're facing Accelerants and became the foundation for this case study.
Sure, thanks, Stephen. Thanks everyone for having us. So my name is Ryan Schauer with Accelerants. So a brief overview of Accelerants. We help companies mainly out of the United States execute better software development strategies. We do that in two ways. One, with our onshore consulting package that we offer to really prep and work with clients to build a better roadmap for their products, and really a lot of coaching we provide them to how to outsource successfully. And our second phase is once our clients are well equipped with all the knowledge and know-how for outsourcing, we connect them to our certified network, which consists of about 40 software development companies that we certify globally. So they're anywhere from Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia, which is one of the things that brought us with eCore. So eCore is one of our certified partners, and they helped us implement our Jira instance within Accelerants.
Thank you. And if you can talk a little bit about the business challenges that you're facing, that's kind of the foundation of this whole case study.
Definitely, yeah. So as we're growing, as the company's growing and our client base is growing, we needed a better platform for tracking, better reporting, account management, providing an accurate invoicing to our clients. And really the big one was more cost efficient per user. So we were using a couple other different vendors that I won't get into, but we found that pairing up with the Atlassian team, it's probably the most cost effective, and we're getting more bang for our buck than we were our other vendors. So we really like the fact that again, as we're growing, and we'll get into Tempo here in a minute, but how easily it is to set up those accounts and how easy it is to track the time, and a lot of project tracking within that space too.
Okay, great. And when we met with Ryan and heard his challenges, we've been working with Tempo and applying it to the Atlassian suite for years. And as a matter of fact, we even use it at eCore internally for some of our own internal tracking. So we were able to quickly customize this solution that allowed Accelerants to improve productivity, increase efficiency, and manage the difficult tasks of budgeting and planning. What we did is we used the full Tempo suite, timesheets for time tracking, Tempo Planner for the obviously planning, and then the cost tracker for reporting and timesheets for in the planning. But we added to that automation for Jira, which we'll talk about a little bit later in a little more detail, because it is kind of the special sauce of all of this, and where some great value came. And then we also applied structure and Easy BI for reporting and planning purposes as well. So it became a full comprehensive solution. I'm going to just give a quick deeper dive into the solution. I'm going to go through these next slides fairly quickly for folks, just to give you an idea. But at the end of it, like I say, we'll be more than happy to spend some time and answer some questions. This is a lightning presentation, so we want to keep it going at a good pace. So the typical Tempo setup, you have your Jira projects on the left, but really starting from the right, you have your customers, you have accounts, and categories. In this case, the customers are tied into contracts for our friends at Accelerants, and then the categories can be billable, non-billable. There's other categories as well, but this will give you an idea as we go through of just the simple structure of this project and how we applied it. So in the account usage, the key here is to take a look at when we create an issue that it goes into Tempo in their timing and it's applied to an account. When we subdivide this into teams within Accelerants, for instance, here's a delivery team, and we have Italo within the team. Italo can then plan out his week and his time throughout the week, and then he'll use Tempo. He'll use Jira to apply his time, and then it'll come out on Tempo timesheets on exactly what he did. This allows Ryan and his team the flexibility to do plan versus actual reporting. And I want to slow down here for a second, Ryan, and ask you a question about what this value this brings to your team, and how this enables you to enhance your planning and utilize your resources.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of consultants that work with accelerants. So we need to know the time that they can allocate to accelerants, because they're doing other jobs as well. So what this sheet gives us, the planned report, it gives us the planned number of hours that they can dedicate to us over a 6-month, 1-year period, depending on how we want to do it. But then also when we book a deal with a client and we sell a certain number of hours, we put before we kick off the project, we put that planned time in here with the allocated consultant. So then we can really kind of see, what we're dealing with. Maybe some consultants aren't available at certain times. And then it gives you a really good window into who's available and who's not. And then when it comes down to the actual, 6 months down the road from an actual project, you can see the actual time spent on the actual project versus what you planned for. And that gives us a really useful tool to figure out, okay, why did we sold this for, 40 hours, but we spent, 80. So we got to do some refactoring on that side. So it gives us a really good window into what we're doing time-wise and how efficient we are with our projects.
Great, thank you. Now I'm going to, and also we do have a dashboard view that I know that Italo and can use to see how he's tracking throughout the time. And I know your consultants use that as well. Going to talk a little bit, shift gears here, and talk a little bit about automation for Jira that we applied here, because it is kind of this special sauce. I know that you have a lot of templates that you had before using Jira, and we have been able to move those over. So within this field, we can automate and create epic stories, tasks related to new initiatives. And we'll talk a little more depth of this, just to give you an idea. There is a grouping of automated templates of which we've applied automation rules. This is just a partial snapshot of some automation rules. And going into more of the structured view here, Ryan, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the power and value Accelerate's gains by being able to apply these templates, and give us a little more feel for what those templates do.
Yeah, so we have a couple different services that we offer our clients, and we map those out step by step. And I worked with Italo to add those steps into a template. So then when we do sign a contract with a client, we can simply go into that one view when we're creating an initiative and simply select, baseline or line, and that pops up all the different phases that we have to go through. Then we just need to backfill and add in the dates. And what's cool about the structured view, which I really like, is that you don't have to go into each story, so to speak, to update it. You can customize this view, and you can, like your start and end dates, you can add those directly in the view. And you can make adjustments directly in the structure section. So where it used to take us, a couple hours to map out and set up the project, now it takes us, about 20 minutes. We select the template, we backfill in the dates that we've agreed on, and we start tracking.
So a lot of value in that, I can see. And just we wanted also to give folks a little overview of some of the cost tracking tools, and also the EasyBI integration that gives you a lot of visuals that helps your management. How are you using this type of reporting internally and also for your executives, et cetera, within the company?
Yeah, cost tracker is big because some of our consulting is it's a flat fee, so we want to track our time against it. So again, setting up the project, you go through the configuration. Again, it takes a couple minutes to just simply map it to the actual budget. And then from there, just making sure that our consultants are plugging their time in the right way. We can then accurately track the burn down of the fee that was paid by the client. So then we always know where we are within budget. And this is just for one client, but we leverage the filters that we can roll up several different projects into one view and get a holistic view of Accelerant's time spent on projects versus what was actually paid to us. So it's very simple to set up. I'm not sure how much experience everyone has with it, but we're definitely enjoying it as far as the more clients we get. Again, I'm spending overall probably about an hour setting up a client, setting up all these reports as well as the templates. So
it beats Excel spreadsheets.
Yep. Yeah. Again, it's typical tools that everyone uses on the business side, but this gives you a very simple view to set up and utilize.
Okay, great. Great. And so summing it up, and before we go to questions, we've taken a Jira software, applied the full suite of Tempo, automation for Jira, kind of the special sauce there, and then utilize Structure and EasyBI to help with planning and reporting. With that said, we're more than happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
All right. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Ryan there. So do you have any questions from the audience here, folks? Okay, I don't see anything listed here, but I do have one question. Looking at some of the graphs here, I see some portfolio for Jira or Jira Align type kind of overlap here with the Tempo. Just curious, did you think about that when you were doing the integrations, or is that plans of the future?
I'll let Ryan, do you want to speak to that one?
Which part were you referring to?
Just when I was looking at some of the graphs, I don't know if you see if you want to show that. I'm just thinking about portfolio for Jira or Jira Align in terms of just, again, the project views, with the costs and the kind of product status.
Yeah, those are other tools. I know Ryan, you've been digging in and using a lot more of the reporting, but we've sort of kept it very much to the core use for Accelerant's at this time. We can always go that direction as they expand and grow, but for now, I think our consultants were able to put this together in a manner that was cost effective and efficient for Accelerant's.
Very cool. And then one last question. How effective are you folks getting everyone to enter their time in the Tempo system?
It's a fun Friday ritual. So we start in the morning and we end up through Sunday afternoon. A lot of it is just making sure we do report on this every Monday. So it's just a habit, and we got to form a habit. We
fair enough, yeah.
Throw some prizes out there, make sure that the first one to do it wins a prize or something like that. So we try to get creative.
Yeah, that was a facetious question. I think all managers have dealt with that. But here's another serious question with Tempo. I'm curious, how have you felt Tempo has been as kind of the add-on you selected? Because I know they're the biggest. Because I always remember at the Atlassian summits, they used to always have the biggest booth. and how do you find that as an add-on for your usage?
They've been excellent both to work with as a company, and also their product has been really good, and we've utilized it in many different instances. As I said, we also use it internally within eCore, so if we're going to use it ourselves, we're pretty comfortable.
Got it. No, fair enough, right? Like I said, obviously they've got a reputation, so it makes sense. I was just curious to hear that. All right, yeah, great.
But excellent to work with. That's the key. They're very, very helpful.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Ryan.
I've got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. When did you begin this implementation? Reason I ask is we had used Tempo probably 3 to 5 years ago or so, and we found it feature incomplete for what we were trying to do. And so I'm curious whether it's changed recently.
Ryan, you put it in what, about 6 months ago altogether?
Yeah, about 6 months ago we started using it. Yeah.
And I know they've been doing a lot of work at Tempo, and even as we went through this process, Ryan learned some more, some fun features and so forth that he is applying. So if you haven't looked at them recently, it might be worth taking another look, and we'd be more than happy to talk about how you're doing your instance, Amanda, and how you'd like to apply it. More than happy to do that.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that it's improved in meeting your needs now. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Great, thanks. All right, folks, we're coming to our last speaker of the evening here. So I'm going to hand it off to Rachel Wright, who is very well known in the Atlassian community. She's been using the product, since 2011. She doesn't even remember what version of Jira or Confluence. And of course, she's very famous for writing the Jira Strategy Admin Workbook. All right, with further ado, I will hand it off to Rachel. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me back. I'm going to stop my video because I'm on a not so great Wi-Fi connection and I need all the bandwidth I can get. Give me 1 second and I'll share. And here's why my bandwidth isn't lovely. I'm sitting in an RV right now in Florida, right above Tampa. And we've been traveling for 6 years now. So I'd love to hear Jira questions. And if you have any RVing questions as well, I'd love to hear those too. So I can see that there's a little bit of a delay with my wonderful connection. So I will try to work with that. So tonight I want to talk about best practices for managing and maintaining Jira. You already know that if you don't watch your Jira instance carefully, it's going to grow out of control. But how do you start? How do you make some small changes now that won't impact your daily business? And oh my gosh, what do you do if your instance is already a mess, which I've seen quite often. So tonight I'll talk to you about some standards you can set so there aren't more schemes to maintain than necessary. We'll talk a little bit about cleaning up schemes and custom fields if you have too many. We'll talk about archiving projects and unneeded issues so they're out of your way. And then we'll also cover tracking changes and customization requests so you have a record and an audit trail. So again, I'm Rachel Wright. I'm a certified Jira administrator, author of the Jira Strategy Admin Workbook, and I'm super happy to share this with you tonight. So first, I've got a warning. This presentation contains swearing, a lot of swearing. But if you swear along with me, your instance will be better tomorrow than it is today. So here's the first swear. I will avoid unnecessary configuration and over customization. So if you're like me, you probably have way too many schemes and way too many customizations to worry about. But before you can clean up, you've got to understand what you already have and stop the bleeding and prevent more unnecessary modification. But how do you do that? Well, for me, this is all about setting standards, crafting information that support your procedures, and then utilizing project templates. So let's discuss each one. So first, I really believe that you need to set up an internal board to direct your changes. Jira is such a powerful application, but a lot of times it's directed by a single person, and that's not great coverage, and that's not great for future thinking either. So set up a governance or a steering committee internally and use that to establish some standards, create some policies, and just look after the health of the application as a whole. So here's what I think an advisory board should do. You'll obviously need to define your own uses for it, but my favorite bullet point in this list is to defend and protect application health in future. If you're not doing that, your Jira application is going to be a mess in 5 years, guaranteed, right? All right, so you set up a board. Who do you invite to that board? My recommendations are listed. And whoever you have, the worst person to have on your board is someone who just cares about their Jira project or some special feature they need. We all have that person at our company who comes running and they just want an add-on installed. They don't really care what the impact might be later. So those aren't the best people for your board. Also, you should rotate these people out and don't be afraid to get rid of somebody who isn't considering the long-term health of the entire application or negatively impacting your mission. And another thing I recommend is your board members, they don't need Jira admin permissions. Matter of fact, sometimes it's better that they don't have admin permissions. You want a variety of perspectives and only people who care about the health of Jira. All right, so hopefully you have a start to an advisory board. And I really think it's something you should take as homework and make sure you set this up if you don't have it already. Next is my favorite part, policies and checklists, right? So much fun. So your board needs to create some policies to ensure application health. It won't just happen on its own organically. And I recommend that you write a policy for customization, application security, preventing and protecting sensitive information, and then of course anything that's specific to the regulations in your country or your industry. And my favorite policy is the customization policy. So I think it's the most important of all of them. And sometimes you have to say no to a request. You know, that happens to all of us as Jira administrators, right? Somebody really wants something and you know it's not a good idea, it's not good for the application. And sometimes it's your boss asking you, right? So how do you say no? Well, this customization policy will help you. So I've got some elements of what I think a good customization policy includes to give you some ideas, but you can also download my customization policy worksheet to craft your own. And the worksheet's free if you already have my book, the Jira Strategy Admin Workbook. So go download that. All right, next up is application security. And this policy usually includes what you can and can't do with all the apps at your company, including Jira. But let's be honest, I mean, when's the last time you looked at your company's security policies, right? Probably never. Maybe the day you were hired, but probably not since, right? So a lot of people forget and they start putting sensitive data in Jira. So instead, I would recommend posting the parts that are relevant to Jira with your other Jira documentation, and that way users can be reminded about what's okay to put in Jira and what's not. And then along those same lines, when we talk about sensitive information, I mean, your advisory board really needs to determine what's okay at your organization. And what's okay is going to depend on, you know, is your application subject to compliance standards? And how do you control access to sensitive data? What other security policies you have, your industry, laws in your country, even whether you collect credit card payments or store customer data. There's so much that goes into it. So there's no one policy that fits everyone. But for me, the safest thing is just to not enter sensitive information into Jira or applications accessible to all users. And then, you know, that includes PII data or SPI data, stuff like passwords, social security numbers, mother's maiden names, you know, what your salary is. I don't like to have any of that stuff in Jira. I think that belongs in a specialized system. That's my opinion. Now, some companies use Jira as a inventory system. I heard somebody talking about inventory earlier today, and they use it to manage their assets, and that's well and good. But think about what that data might happen to that data if it fell into the wrong hands. Like, what if you list your server IP addresses in Jira issues and somebody who shouldn't have that data were to come across it? So just be careful about what you're storing and be mindful and specific in your policy about what's okay and what's not. And then, of course, we all have lovely acronyms we have to worry about, specific policies for organizations that are subject to specific compliance requirements. And here are just some common ones for you to think about. All right, next up is project templates. So, you know, Jira comes loaded with default schemes to get you started. But before you start building custom schemes, I recommend that you decide how many you're going to support. And I suggest just 3 to start out with, right? I create one set of schemes for dev projects, one for support, and one for pretty much everything else, task-based stuff. So let's use development as a common example. You know, you'll have a specific issue type scheme with epics, stories, bugs, tasks, and subtasks. And then you might have specific dev screens that contain specific fields, you know, the fix version, story points, effects version, stuff like that. And then your bug work might have special workflow steps for validation. I see my internet connection is unstable, so I'm going to stop it for a minute. Hopefully it's back. Dear internet, please work tonight. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, so you might have a special workflow with special fields. For example, like in my bug workflows, I like to add a field for steps to reproduce an expected result. So it's a very common configuration. I create it as a template, and then I document all these settings so the team knows what each template contains. And then I try to start new teams off using a template until they have a real business need for a custom configuration. All right, so the next best practice, change management. And that's simply just a way to record your changes and communicate them to your fellow admins and users. So think about where you track your changes today. Hopefully it's not Post-it notes, emails, or nowhere. But I recommend that you create a Jira project to support Jira. And you could also use it to support all the other apps at your organization, or maybe just the service desk if you have that as well. Either way, the easiest place to track Jira changes is in Jira. And this all works perfectly well, except when Jira is unavailable for maintenance. So definitely think about that. All right, so what to track in this project? So my personal rule is that I document the changes that only application or system administrators can make. So I wouldn't track like adding a component because a project level admin can do that, right? But I would track if I installed a new app, if I created a new permission scheme, or if I set up a new incoming mail handler, for example. I document all that stuff. All right, so why bother, right? It sounds like it just gave you all a lot of extra work. The reason is Jira does have an audit log, but it doesn't provide a whole lot of detail. You know, it tells you what changes made and gives you the timestamps, but it can't capture why a certain change was made or who requested it and other important change details. And then as we kind of talked about before, sometimes you have to make a change that you don't agree with, your boss is making you make the change, or you know it's bad for the application. And it's really important to document, you know, why did you make this change? And it's going to help your future admins, or it's going to help you if you need to look back and understand why a certain setting is the way it is. I can't remember all this stuff. I have to document everything. And also sometimes there are multiple ways to achieve the same thing. So your documentation is going to help explain how you made that change and the factors that influence the decision. And if you have to undo that decision, you're going to be happy you have that documentation. So Atlassian now has that free version of Jira Cloud. And free is awesome, but it doesn't include the audit log function. So if you're on the free version, you definitely need to be tracking your changes even more. Okay, next topic. Let's talk about having a test environment and the importance of a test environment. So it's shocking to me, but so many organizations I work with just don't have one. And you know what? I didn't have one at the beginning either. I made all of my mistakes in production like a champ. But you know what? After you bring down Jira a couple times, you see how important it is to have a place to learn and experiment without impacting production data. So in this example, I've got a bunch of different ways that I can use to distinguish my test environment from production. So you can see, you know, I changed the colors to green, production's blue, so it's easy to tell. Added an announcement banner, which works in server and data center. There is an app for cloud that allows announcement banner functionality. It's a third-party app. And then I changed the display name to Jira Dev. The URL is different, that helps me. I also changed my avatar icon in test. I mean, seriously, I've made so many changes in production by mistake, thinking I was in the test environment. So do everything you can to distinguish the two. Sometimes admins also change the logo at the top left. Here's some recommendations for how to treat your test environment differently. The first thing I do is I disable email, because otherwise it's going to notify end users with duplicate or test data, and that's super confusing for them. So just turn it off and then only turn it back on if you need to test an email specific feature, and you know, be careful what you touch because Jira is going to send a lot of spam. And then if you're a server or data center customer, I highly recommend that you give application admin access to, that you give database access to your admin team. Now just read only, right? You don't want to be making changes directly in the Jira database. That's never recommended. But I'll tell you, I'm no DBA, but understanding how the data is structured in the database solves so many mysteries for me. And there's also things that you can access in the database that it's information that's just not available in the admin UI. So as long as it doesn't violate your company's security policies, get your admins read-only access. It's so helpful. All right, test environment options. I've listed my favorite at the top. So for cloud customers, these are the folks using the Atlassian hosted environment. You can get a second instance and just pay the lowest license tier. So I don't know how pricing is going to change with some of Atlassian's recent server decommission information, but the last price I saw, it's $10 a month for 10 users. So that's a relatively cheap way to get a second instance that you can use to test. There's also that free version I mentioned for cloud. It's just like the paid version, but it doesn't include permissions for projects or issues. So it's not useful for testing those areas. And that's why I have it listed second. It also doesn't have that audit log that we talked about earlier. And then there's a free 7-day trial that you can extend an additional 30 days if you contact Atlassian support. It's something, I mean, I think you need a test environment available to your team at all times, not just for 37 days. So I would pick a different option. And then last worst case scenario, if you just can't have another application, at least create a test project in production. Server customers and data centers for testing purposes, have your technical contact log into my.atlassian.com and you can generate that needed license. Of course, you can get a second instance and pay that lowest license tier. There's that 37-day trial. And also there's the idea of create a test project in your production instance. So whatever you choose, just make sure you have a place to test your changes before you unleash them on your users. You know, at least install something on an old laptop under your desk, right? Anything is better than nothing. Okay, so in addition to your advisory board, I recommend that you form a small group of ambassadors to help you with other tasks like sharing info, answering questions, and really providing tier 1 support to your users. So here's the way I handle this. When somebody tells me they need a new Jira project and they want to be the project admin, I say, great, congratulations, you are now part of our ambassadors group. And I enlist these people as power users to help out. Anytime they can answer questions without running to the admin team, it's great, it saves time, it gets them the answer faster, and admins can focus on bigger changes than, you know, how do I create a new filter? All right, it is time for more swearing. So here are the next swears. And let's move on to our next best practice, which is maintenance. All right, so a maintenance strategy is something hopefully that's proactive and it's essential to a healthy application. So some things for you to determine: what regular maintenance are you going to do? How often are you going to do it? And how are you going to communicate it to end users? And this is for everyone, not just for server and data center. Cloud admins have some maintenance to do as well. So there's 23 things that I do either quarterly or biannually, depending on which instance we're talking about. And you can download my list of scheduled maintenance to help identify actions and document your plan. All right, next up, I have some tools. Now, these are only for server and data center users, but you know what? Cloud users still pay attention because there's still good information about how Jira runs in the background. And who knows, maybe one day you change companies and the company you go to is using data center instead. You might need to know this one day. Okay, so the first thing for server and data center is the instance health check function. It's part of the troubleshooting and support tools. And this checks for common problems with the file system, attachments, index, database, lots of stuff. So you can see in the screenshot that it's found a problem, and I can click the down arrow to get some clues for solving it. And when there is a problem, Jira is going to nag you in the admin area with an on-screen message. And you can set the frequency of those notifications. I like to turn it all the way up, which is the default, because I want to know when this thing has found problems for me. But that's how to change the frequency. And the next is the integrity checker. And this checks for different issues. This is issues with search, permissions, workflow problems. I really like the workflow tests, and I run them anytime I make a major workflow change. And this can take a while to complete. Like in my instance, it takes about 30 minutes. So instead of running the whole thing, maybe pick and choose and exclude some of those tests when it's appropriate. All right, so in my screenshot, you can see that there was a problem detected, and you can either try to figure out what the problem is and correct it on your own, or you can ask Jira to try and fix it for you. It's not in the screenshot, but there's a fix button at the bottom that you can click. So for this specific error, I investigated, I figured out that it was because a permission scheme no longer existed. that it was calling to. So I let the integrity checker fix the error for me. And then I ran it again just to make sure the error was gone and everything was great. It never appeared, problem solved. And then the last is my favorite. This is a tool called Integrity Check for Jira, and it's an app in the marketplace from Botan Software. And this helps you detect, locate, and fix issues in filters, agile boards, and dashboards. So all those user objects that all your lovely users create. So you can see in this screenshot, there's 91 problems that I need to address. Missing settings, duplicate settings. But the great thing about this tool is that it tells you exactly what's wrong and where to find the problem. You don't have to guess, you don't have to hunt around, you don't have to check logs. JQL filter, it tells me what's the name of the filter, who's the owner, what's wrong with the JQL, like even the name of the missing status or field. It tells me everything, it's great. And now I can update that filter myself, or I can alert the filter's owner, hey, your stuff's broken, please go fix it. All right, our next best practice is cleanup. This is my favorite. Periodically, we've got to audit what we have and remove what we no longer need. It's just a matter of when, not if, right? So here's my little archive checklist. And I say archive in quotes because the only real archive ability is in Jira Data Center and Jira Cloud Premium. But for the rest of us, here's some things you can do. Now, none of these things improve performance, right? They don't take issues out of the index, but at least it's a step in the right direction and helps clean up your application. So here's what I do. The first thing is I change the project's name. I prepend something like X archived. And that way all the archive projects are listed together alphabetically at the bottom of any list. And this is good for users and admins. And then I create a category with the same name. I create an X archived category and I associate all the projects to it. Next, I change the project's icon to like a big red scary X or a lock or something that shows that something's up here. It's not the happy little icon that was there before. And then I use the project's description area to add some copy explaining what's going on with this project. I usually use some phrasing like, this project's archived, data still available for legal and historical reasons, but no new issues can be created. Create new issues in this project instead. And then next, I disable the ability to edit and transition issues. The last thing I want to do is archive a project and have people still using it. Sometimes I let issues be moved to other projects, but it's usually just for a short period of time. And then other times I hide the project altogether. One caution there, when you hide a project, don't hide it from your other admins. This has happened to me once. An admin before me hid projects, hid them for everyone but his username. And the only way I could find out that the project existed was because I had that database access I told you about earlier. So if you're gonna hide projects, make sure the whole admin team can see them. And then finally, I remove the notification scheme because it's not helping anybody, right? There's no activity, so there's no notifications. So it's one easy way to do some cleanup. So here's an example of a permission scheme. The first thing I do is I just go through all of the I go through all the admin areas and I look for unused and unneeded schemes and settings. So as you can see, that second scheme, no projects are using it, so delete it. It's not helping anybody to keep that stuff around. And then the third scheme, it was created by Jira when Service Desk was installed, and you can tell by how it's named. So what I like to do with the third one is I would rename that scheme to represent its purpose instead of the name of the project using it. The idea in Jira is to share your schemes, not build one scheme for every project. And then once I've cleaned up these two schemes, there's nothing more. Now go to the notifications page, now go to the custom fields page and clean up there. Now, this is obviously very manual and very time consuming. So don't get overwhelmed, just do one admin page at a time and eventually you'll have a nice clean Jira instance. Here's a quick tip. Sometimes it's useful to be able to find scheme IDs and you can hover over one of the links in the actions column to see it in your address bar. And then that second screenshot example, that scheme's unique ID is shown at the end of the URL. And of course, the very easiest way is to get it from the Jira database if you have read-only access. All right, so let's talk briefly on cleaning up custom fields. Now, I have an entire course on this, so I'm just going to share my high-level checklist today. But first, like, here's a real warning, not just me swearing, right? I need to say, don't just start deleting stuff, right? You need information before you can make custom field deletion decisions. And the reason is deleting a custom field can't be undone, and custom field data cannot be recovered. So be very careful when clicking that delete button, or there will be real swearing. All right, so here's my method for reducing your custom field count. And the first step before you make any changes is to do an audit. You know, you need to understand what you have right now and how much it differs from the default to your field list. So go grab my free worksheet and use it to compare your application to a default installation and see how far you've strayed from that default. And it'll also help you figure out how many of your fields are standard and how many are custom. All right, a few ways to approach this audit. You can either do it manually, or you can use an app from the Atlassian Marketplace to help. One app I really like is Configuration Manager for Jira. I've got some apps that I recommend on a slide at the end of the presentation. Now, apps are super helpful and they can help you with your research, but you know, only a human can determine the value of a specific field for your organization. So even if you have an app help you make a list, keep in mind you're still going to have to do a little bit of research from a business perspective. All right, next, you've got your list. List all the field names and the types, and then start researching and classifying each. And then finally, identify some fields that you probably don't need anymore. Once you have that list of unneeded fields, your next task is to decide if there's data that you need to retain or if you can get rid of that data. So regardless of what you do, take a database backup. You can remove that field from the admin UI if there's no data to retain. But if you do have data, like maybe it's old legacy data, maybe it's data from yesterday, the first thing you can do is append that data to a different field. So if you move the data, it'll allow you to delete that custom field and still keep the data. So there are a few ways to do this. You can do it with a post function in a workflow. You can do it with scripting. Or you can do it with import and export utilities. So I've got a couple good examples of apps. Again, these are shown at the end of the presentation, but I really like JSU Automation Suite for Jira workflows. I like Script Runner for Jira, and also the Jira command line interface. You could use all of these to move data around so you can get rid of those custom fields that you don't need, but retain it. And then of course, when you're making any big changes in Jira, go slow. I only like to change or delete one big thing at a time, so I can track the cause of any problems that arise. And then good to know, if you delete custom fields, user filters that rely on them will break, but you can use the Integrity Check for Jira app that we talked about earlier to detect those problems and help users fix their filters. And after you've completed your data migration and deleted any fields you don't need anymore, it's a good idea to re-index. But of course, re-indexes impact performance. Always do them outside of peak hours. Jira Cloud re-indexes itself automatically. Data center and server users can go trigger a background or foreground re-index in the admin area. All right, so after cleanup, always update your documentation. Remember we talked about logging all changes before. And then add a custom field audit to your regular Jira maintenance schedule. I try to do this quarterly or biannually. But of course, if you resist the urge to create unneeded custom fields in the first place, then you're going to have less to clean up in the future. And a quick tip, whenever somebody runs to my desk and says, hey, we need a new custom field, create it. I ask the user how they're going to report on that data. And if they have no idea how they're going to use it, that might be a clue that a custom field is not really warranted. So only create custom fields that are going to be queried. Otherwise, tell the people to stick that information in the description or in a comment. All right, next up, short and long workflows. So while you're improving your configuration, I also look for ways to make workflows more efficient. This doesn't necessarily make Jira any faster, but it makes users happier. So instead of capturing every little step in a workflow, you can use a phased approach by just simply breaking your process into phases that represent a collection of smaller steps. So each phase represents a status in Jira, and then all those small little steps in the phase, those don't have to be statuses either. So one example, imagine a company signing a partnership agreement with another company, You can use something really short for this, like open, in review, in execution, closed. And here's what that looks like as phases. So it's a really simple workflow, but the legal team is doing a ton of things in the background, and those just don't need to be reflected in JIRA. So in this example, in the in review phase, the legal team's reviewing contracts, they're researching legal topics, communicating with teams, negotiating terms, doing all of these things that they have to do that don't need to be reflected in JIRA. And then in the in execution status, the CEO is finding his favorite pen. Both companies are trading paperwork back and forth. The legal team maybe enters documents into a contracts database. So the point is that a phased approach is always more flexible than a super long workflow. I just worked with a company who had, I think it was 42 statuses and 1,007 transitions in one single workflow. Wow. So they were not using a phased approach. So what we did is we chunked it up into smaller steps like this, and we were able to get them down to 7 statuses instead of 42. So think about how useful a short generic workflow might be for your teams. And just a quick tip, I mean, it's the same as with custom fields. If you're not going to query for all issues in a certain status, that's a clue that that status probably isn't necessary or useful. All right, next up is training. And I like to deliberately train my admins. And then I like to provide separate training for project admins, power users, and then service desk agents and end users. And when you're thinking about training, focus on determining your training needs and your timeline, things that you can do to encourage adoption. And I especially like to deliver information on an ongoing schedule. I think the worst kind of training is like your first day, you log into JIRA, you sit down and you take like a 40-hour course because you're going to forget everything you learned in the beginning. What I like to do instead is kind of drip training as the user gets more comfortable in JIRA. So for example, like a brand new user, just give them the basics. You know, don't teach them about JQL. Just answer questions like, what is JIRA? How do they use it? How do they access it? And then when they're a little more comfortable, you teach them about sharing and organizing their data, creating filter subscriptions, linking, logging time. And then power users, they want more information usually, right? They want to know about basic and advanced search, bulk changes. So really think about your audience when you're delivering your training. Team leads, project managers, scrum masters, these folks want to know about boards, dashboards, and reports. And then service desk agents want to know about how to meet that SLA and how to use those additional JSD features to support their customers. And finally, you've got your application admins, and they want to know about configuration, performance, workflows, best practices, mistakes, and also certification. So I like to tailor my training to all these different groups instead of trying to do one monster training for the whole company at the same time. So I really recommend doing it this way. Okay, the final swear. Above all, I will leave JIRA in a healthier state than I inherited it. That is the overall goal, right? So you've probably heard of the Hippocratic Oath or the phrase, first do no harm. And the Hippocratic Oath is a list of ethical statements for doctors. But for us, we've got the JIRAcratic Oath. And it's like the 10 commandments for JIRA. You can take the oath at the URL shown and download a certificate. And this is going to look fabulous on your office wall. It's a conversation starter, if nothing else, right? All right, here's that slide I told you about with all the URLs, the apps I really love, and the download links. I'll give you a minute to snap a photo or grab a screenshot. And then finally, if you want to share your feedback on this presentation so I can make it better for the next audience, I would love to have that. If you share your feedback, I'll enter you in, to win a digital copy of the JIRA Strategy Admin Workbook. All right, that was a lot in a short amount of time. Let me go back to that last slide in case you missed it, and I'll stand by for any comments or questions.
Great, thank you, Rachel. First, 2 comments. One is you scared us when you said about all the swearing. I was like, oh my goodness. It's a question of this particular presentation. And second, I had one comment from someone saying, this is great info, but the problem is I'm not the one who needs it. So So we always have our team members that we want to blame, right? All right, so we do have a couple of questions here. I think the first one, I think from Phil, I think you answered, but maybe you can add more information. And he was asking, can you share an example of where direct database access solved a problem the admin UI couldn't?
Yes, absolutely. So Jira shows you transitions per issue, right? Well, what if I want to get a report of all, like how many times issues went back to the beginning of the workflow? You can look at it one at a time, but what if I want multiple issues? So I was able to use a database query to do that. Another example, last login. So a lot of the user management stuff, unless you have an app, there's no user management tools in Jira. So I use database queries. One more example, and this is my favorite one. If you don't have Botron's app that I mentioned earlier, Power Admin and Integrity Check for Jira, and you want to see whose filters you're about to break, there's a table in the Jira database called search request, and you can query there with SQL, see how many people are using that custom field or that project or that value, and know whose filters you're about to break with your Jira change.
Got it. Great. Thank you. And then I think one more question we have, I think was from John, is about, I think going back to your point about not adding custom fields, and if the user doesn't have a good reason. So this question is, so what if these things do need to be somehow tracked? Comments. I guess comments field is, I believe, is what the question is asking.
So what I like to do is first encourage users to use standard features. A lot of times users come running and we need new this, we need new that, and they just don't realize that Jira can already do what you're trying to do, and here's how to do it. So the first is just user education. So I like to tell users before we create a custom field, try using a label, try using a field we already have. I don't like putting requirements information in the comments because that information gets lost. But sometimes if a custom field is warranted, I'll create something very generic, like a notes field, and folks can use that. But the key is to really think about how they're going to report on the data, and the answer to that question determines how you should implement what they've asked for.
Great. I just have two more questions here, and I think we want to hold because it is getting late here. One question from Amanda: is there an integrity checker for cloud?
I don't think so. I don't know of one. I would assume that stuff's run in the background.
Okay. All right, and then one from Robert here is, what are your thoughts on custom field context, benefit or hazard?
Oh, both. Hi, Robert. Nice to see you online. I think both, really. There's always a use case, right? For everything you can do in Jira. Jira is so flexible that it's a blessing and a curse. And there's always a good reason to do certain things, and there's always a bad reason to do certain things. So I would need to know more about your use case. I try to limit the scope of any custom fields to the projects and the issue types that they're supporting. So that's good for performance, but that's bad for other admins who maybe don't realize you've done that, and they're staring at a screen and they're like, the field is on the screen, why can't I see it? You know, it's in the config, but you can't see it as an end user, and I'm staring at it and I'm staring at it, oh, the context has been changed, that's why. So there's also two uses of the word context. There's that use, and then there's something called a custom field context, and that allows one field to be used for multiple values. So one example.
Oh, looks like we lost her.
Well, I have a customer who has a country field, and
Rachel,
needs the names
Rachel,
of the
sorry.
countries listed, like Canada, USA, Mexico.
Rachel, can you hear me?
Oh no.
I'm sorry, we lost you. Can you start again for the answer? We lost you there for a second, so we didn't hear the beginning of it.
I'm not sure what part you heard, but I was saying that there's two uses of the word context. There's the scope of the field, which projects does it apply to, and which issue types does it apply to. And then the second is what's known as a custom field context, which lets you use the same field in different ways. And one example is if you have, let's say, a selection list called country. In one project, you might need long names for countries like Mexico, USA, Italy, Germany. And another project might need country codes, for example. So you can use a context to have those two different selection lists in two different projects. So sorry, Robert, I don't know. Hopefully I answered your question. It was a good one.
All right, great. All right, thank you, Rachel. All right, folks, that concludes our presentation portion of the evening. Again, thank you to all our speakers tonight. And again, please contact them if you have any more further questions. And again, like I said, thank you again for all of you guys, folks joining here tonight. Note again, I think the recording and all the slides will be also shared on the event page afterwards here in a couple of days. So feel free to check that out afterwards. I know there was a couple of questions asked about that. Okay. With that, I'm going to kind of switch over now, kind of ending this here. I'm going to go to some announcements, and then of course the favorite part here, the raffle here. Give me one moment while I share my screen here. Oops. Looks like we can see that. Oh, no. 1 minute here. I think that did not work correctly. All right, let's try that again. Okay, so I just want to talk to you about a couple of events coming up. So first, as I mentioned in the beginning, the Atlassian Team Tour. I believe it's kind of all-day event. So again, all things on teams and agile teamwork, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about the cloud and the server decision. And then additionally, for folks who want to do some development, there is an Atlassian Developer Day, which I don't think is been advertised as much, but I believe they have, I think, registration similar on the same page as a team tour. And I know there's going to be a lot of focus on Forge. As you know, it's coming, the next-gen cloud app development platform that they're kind of showcasing here. So it's, again, is 2 events from Atlassian. For us, our next user group meeting, kind of community event here, is going to be on November 19th, kind of what we call a Jira Roundtable. This is something we did, I believe, last year or the year before. It's kind of really well received. It's basically if you're a Jira admin or I guess maybe in administration of any of the Atlassian ecosystem, it's a great chance to meet your fellow admins and just really kind of discuss kind of issues, thoughts, kind of share some ideas. Again, this is going to be a kind of a smaller event, but again, it can be really useful for to network as to kind of share ideas. So please feel to register once we have the page up, I believe, by next Monday. And then next, I want to talk about some of our presentations from our partners here. So there's kind of a joint one from ALM Works and Seed Prime about scaling Agile. So as you know, the SAFe framework is a very popular usage now of Agile for large organizations. So that's going to be on how to scale Agile. Then Seed Prime also has one about what's called the discussion link for Atlassian Cloud. This, I believe, is about the different tiers that you have from Atlassian Cloud. And of course, I guess it's going to be more relevant now with the depth of server. And some others here are Elements is going to talk about the cloud version. As Nelly mentioned earlier, they've released a cloud version of the Elements Connect add-on, so I believe they'll speak more about that. And then eCore mentioned they'll have another upcoming November webinar, so kind of stay tuned. And of course, you're free to go to the eCore site to get information about that. So just a quick note about announcements. So again, thank you everyone for joining. And so now let's go to kind of the raffle portion here. So the raffle, as I mentioned, is kind of really a thank you to all the sponsors who sponsor our events here. So just again, a quick note of the various raffle items that we have here tonight. So we have 5 different raffle gifts here you can win. As I mentioned, you have the 2 Amazon gift cards. We have kind of 2, I guess, Visa gift cards from eCore. And we have a bottle of bourbon from Seed Prime, which is the grand prize here. So hopefully stick around here. So what we do is we will do a raffle pick from kind of a random thing here. So give me 1 second as I share our screen here to do the raffle pick. All right. So I have names of everyone here. For our raffle here. So I have a wheel here, so I'm going to shuffle all the names here, and I'm going to spin it. I believe, hopefully you can hear the spinning here. And so our first winner for our $25 Amazon gift card is Jan Terry. All right. So Jan, if you could share your information on the chat or just give the information to either Madhu Kapil or myself, just your email address, we'll put you in touch to win the raffle. All right. So then let's go ahead and do the second raffle here for the $25 gift card. All right, Elliot, congratulations. You are the winner for that. Oh, not Elliot, I apologize, it's Amanda. All right.
Amanda there?
I'm sorry?
Philip, let's hold on. Let's check if they're there. We need to first look for Jane if she's around.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you know what? We do want you to be here at the end here. Yep.
Jane, can you please confirm?
Can you folks see if they're there?
Okay.
But Jen, can you acknowledge that you're there and respond to
you? Need your email ID.
I'm here.
Sorry, Phil, I'm no Vanna Voigt here. You're right.
Who was the second winner, Dilip?
Who are you looking for, Elliot?
I was Amanda, I believe, right?
Hello, Amanda's still here.
Oh, perfect, Amanda. Great, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, just put your info, share your email ID, and we will send you the contact info to get your, collect your gift card. Okay. Are we good, Madhu? Should we go forward?
I'm just asking Amanda, can you please enter your...
All right.
Mustafa mentioned that he is not in the list.
Yeah, Mustafa's, you know what? I apologize, Mustafa. Did we not add you there? Right. We will add you from...
And remember, folks,
we will add you, Mustafa. Okay, so should we go ahead then?
Yeah.
All right, folks, let's run through this quickly here. This is another $25 gift card here. Joe, congratulations again. So Joe has won a couple, but I guess this is, the kind of the lotto saying here, you got to play to win it. So he comes for all our events.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Joe. All right, and then our last gift card here. Samantha, congratulations again, and again, kind of another recurring winner here. Samantha is still there? Whether we good?
Let's wait for her.
All right. Yep. Samantha's there.
I'm
Perfect.
here. Sorry, I was on mute.
Perfect. All right. And then last one. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Madhu.
No, I'm just kidding. I told her it's too late.
No. Okay. And just a note here for the folks, some of you folks are wondering why some of the names are not added here. So obviously partners can't win, and of course, kind of the co-leaders, we can't win. So that is why it's a reduced list of names here. All right, so let's do our final spin here for the winner of the grand prize here of the bourbon. Andrew, congratulations. Andrew, it pays good to come back here.
It does pay to come back.
All right. Congratulations, Andrew. All right, we will send you the information, so please, again, share your contact info.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, folks, I think that covers it for us here for this portion in terms of the raffle prizes here. And as I mentioned, we will keep on here. I know it's close to 7 o'clock here, but I think I do want to keep the session open here to ask any questions about server or just to kind of any of the questions that you have tonight for the community group. But again, if you want to drop off, feel free to do so. And again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. All right. With that, I will open for folks who are in the throes of the decision of the end of life server. So who wants to go first here? John, I know you're going to say something.
Spent a lot of stuff on community, man.
The open letter was really interesting, but there's been a lot of comments and conversations. We're in a tough spot because we're a nonprofit, so we don't pay for our server licenses, but there's no discount for data center for us. So we can't go that way, and we cannot go to cloud because of HIPAA regulations.